Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Crime Family. I'm your co-host AJ, and I'm here with my sisters Stephanie and Katie. This is our celebration of our 100th episode. So our finale of season 5 actually was our official 100th episode, but we just wanted to do a retrospective one just to chat about the show. And I feel like just the nature of the way that we do the show, we don't ever really get the chance to just have a, sit down or a casual conversation about things. It's much more of like, a focus obviously on the case. So this is our opportunity just to chat amongst ourselves about how we feel about the first 100 episodes and the podcast in general and what we've learned along the way and things like that, or whatever else comes up. We don't really have a script or a agenda or anything, so we're just gonna kind of shoot the shit or talk off the cuff or whatever. So I guess I'll just hand it over to you two first. Like, how do you feel about hitting 100 episodes? Did you ever feel we'd get this far, or what are your thoughts?
It's actually crazy to me that we have 100 episodes. In a way, it feels like we've done more, but also feels like we've done like way less. So it's like, I don't know, so crazy.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like I can't believe it's been 100 because like I said before, it feels like we haven't done 100. Like it feels like way more than we've actually done. But then you think back and like the amount of work it takes, it feels more than 100. So yeah, I feel like I don't know. Like I feel like it was more work than I was expecting, but kind of got used to it, so it's okay.
Yeah, and technically it's we've had like bonus episodes for like the Patreon or whatever. We've had like update episodes, so technically it's like more than 100. But if you're counting just like official episodes of the seasons, we've had 5 seasons and 20 episodes per season, so it's 100. But yeah, I think same. I didn't expect it to be as much work as it ended up being with the editing and the research. So I'm definitely happy that we've stuck through it. Hitting 100 episodes, considering how much work it was.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, like sometimes we go back and like re-record a whole episode because like, oh, that doesn't sound good, or like, oh, that sucked, we have to do it again. We'd like re-record the whole thing. So thankfully we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I remember the first episode that we did. I do remember recording it like 3 times.
I know, actually 3 times.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we've improved since then. We don't have to do that. But also I think we've learned just like, A, it doesn't have to be perfect, and B, we just know like how to edit around it or to like not have to re-record the whole thing. Like we can record sections of it or whatever, right?
I was just thinking like the other day, like when you said it was 100 episode, I was like thinking to myself, like I can't even remember all of the cases that we've done. So I had to like look back and to see which ones we have done. And I was like, oh yeah, we did this case. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. To me, like, I remember when our very first episode, we had like you guys were saying, like we had to do it so many times. It's like, kept telling to myself, like, this was just like a hobby for us. But like, it came more of like a second job, even though we weren't getting paid, but like a second job because it was so much time consuming. And I'm like, I don't know if we're all 3 of us are cut out to continue this on, but I'm so glad that we did that.
I know. I felt like I was, I don't know, trying to be a perfectionist. So it was like, oh, this doesn't sound good. Like the editing, I would spend hours and hours editing, like, and only be like 20 minutes into the episode. So now I think we're just better at recording, so it doesn't take as long. But yeah, I definitely feel like I was putting way too much emphasis on the little things, especially starting out. So it was way more work than I was expecting.
When I first started, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can do cases and like talk about them. But I realized that you guys are way better at talking about cases, and I'm just better at researching them and sharing my opinions. Like, I don't know, like I can't talk. Like, right, I can talk like this, like casually, but when I'm like, I don't feel like I'm under pressure and I have to like talk like very seriously. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I guess I kind of struggled too with like how I wanted it to be like super serious and not, because I feel bad if we're like joking around and laughing in an episode, because I'm like, these are real people. This is like a murder case, and here we are laughing, having a good time. So I always struggled with like, oh, should it be serious completely, or should we have a little bit of our side banter? Because I'm like, I don't know, is that disrespectful? So I feel like I've gotten over that a little bit. It's just but yeah, in the beginning I was very like, everything has to be scripted, serious, exactly as it is on the page, but I think I've lightened up a little.
I think that's one thing I struggled with too, is finding the balance, because at one point, like, I felt like, because even I actually got feedback from one of my friends like early on, and he was like, "Oh, I love the show, but one thing is I would love to hear more of like your dynamic or your interactions with each other," which was good feedback. But I feel like, because at first we were so focused on, the case, obviously, and we didn't really, what Katie was saying, want to, we're not going to make jokes or like, go off topic too much. But I guess finding that balance, I don't know if we've mastered it yet. I feel like we're always going to be trying to find the right balance, because there are some podcasts out there for true crime that are like comedy true crime shows, but they're talking about murderers, but it's like, it's classified as a comedy show. And I was like, I don't really like that. I don't feel like that's appropriate.
I feel
But
the same.
you also don't want to be like a robot just talking and not having any type of emotion. So
I guess it also depends on the mood I'm into, because there's some podcasts I listen to where it's like just straight up the host, only the host, and he just like straight up facts, and there's no opinions, nothing. It's just very objective. So I mean, I like those too, though, but I think that's kind of hard when there's more than one person. So, yeah. And also, I think like one of the podcasts I listen to all the time is Dateline, and of course that's like professional, and they're all journalists and stuff, so it's very like by the facts. But then they've come out with a new section called like Talking Dateline. So it's kind of like we kind of combine what like our opinions and our banter in the episode, but for what they do is they have like the episode, and then they have an additional one where they kind of talk about their opinions on it. So that's kind of cool, but also kind of made me realize that I don't have to be as serious, because they were like, in one of these episodes they were talking, and there was like an earthquake happened, and one of the guys like, "Oh, there's an earthquake happening right now," and they were like, "Oh my god!" And like they didn't edit it out or anything, and then it's just like, "Okay, we can keep going now." Like, oh, like it doesn't have to be so official every time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I struggled with, of like how we wanted to be so professional, like some podcasts out there, but it's like, we're not professionals. This is not what we do for a living, so it's like it's okay to like not talk professional. I mean, we can talk professionally, but it's okay to like have a little side banter or side comment, and it's like, because we're not professionals, even though we're doing like a serious crime podcast.
And I also think, like, for me, I like opinion-based shows, whether it's true crime or whether it's like news in general. I like, because to me, it's like the opinion of someone or their personality is what makes it unique and interesting. Because if someone's just spouting the facts, like, I feel like anyone can do that, or I can just read it myself on a piece of paper. But it's like, I want to hear what people's opinions are. I want to hear their thoughts, their theories, and also get to know their personality, or like, have to enjoy their personality. So I feel like for me, that's what I look for in a podcast. So when it's a true crime show, it's like, yes, I like ones that are fact-based, but they also, I don't know, you can tell their personality. They're not just a talking head. They're just like a person who has opinions, but they're also talking about the case. So to me, I guess that's where I find the balance. But
yeah, I guess if it's like respectful, obviously, then it's fine. Which I think, yeah, maybe we could incorporate more of that into the upcoming seasons, if we want.
I also realized, like at the very beginning, is like we all don't have to agree on a certain opinion, or we all have our own opinions, and it's okay to like disagree on someone's theory or what you think happened, or you think this person is guilty or innocent. Like, we don't all have to agree, like, yes, he is, or no, he isn't. It's okay to have like our own opinions and why we think that. But I just remember at the beginning of when we first did it, I was like, I didn't want to like, I mean, we always like say our opinions, but I was like, I feel like we all have to agree on the opinion, or on like a certain thing. But like, no, we don't. We can all have our own opinions. That's what makes it better, if we all have different ideas or different thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting because going in, I thought our opinions would differ a bit more than they have, because for the most part, we've kind of agreed almost on everything, except for a few things here and there, which I thought wasn't going to be the case. But yeah, it actually, we do agree on more, I guess, because a lot of it is just obvious whether the person did it or not. But yeah, That's disinteresting.
Yeah, I guess I also too didn't really know in terms of opinions, like where if we were going to agree most of the times. I mean, I'm still waiting for the time when like one of us just gets pissed off and leaves and like shuts down. No, I'm kidding. Just like fuck this and leaves, which hasn't happened yet. So who knows? Maybe season 6. But yeah, I guess also one thing I've learned too is like, I mean, I guess I knew this before the podcast. It didn't take doing a podcast to know this, but you're never going to please everyone. I mean, at the end of the day, it's our show and we can do it as we choose. I mean, because even when we're deciding, like when we were talking about how we were going to do season 5, which is how we ended up doing it, deep dives and like multi-part episodes. I was like, there's probably people who listen to us who, like that it's a new case every week and they can just like listen to it once and just be done the case. And then there's others who do like, going a little bit deeper, but it's also like, you're never going to please everyone because if you stuck with the way we were doing it, there's also people who like it the other way. So, you're never going to please everyone. You just kind of have to do it how you feel is best to do it. And like, obviously you can take feedback, but like at the end of the day, we're not going to please 100% of the people. And people have an opinion about everything. So that's also something I learned too.
I also learned like I don't really care what other people think about our podcast. It's because at the end of the day, it's like we're doing the best we can and it's our podcast and we can do whatever we want. But I remember thinking like when we first started, I was like, I don't know. I'm like, am I going to feel really like insulted if someone doesn't like the way I talk or if someone doesn't like the way I'm doing things? But I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I really don't care. It's how I present myself is how I feel, and if they don't like it, well, then they don't have to listen.
And I mean, they'll probably still listen and they'll probably still comment just because. Also, there's a lot of trolls out there who just like to put other people down. But I'm an advocate for constructive feedback, or like, if you have feedback or something we can do better, we always love to hear that. But also at the end of the day, we're never going to please everyone. So we might as well just keep doing what we're doing. And we've had like a decent level of success. I think obviously we're not like the number one podcast or like super popular or whatever, but I feel like we do have a consistent base of people who do come back week to week. That isn't just our friends and family, which is what I thought at the beginning. I was like, okay, we'll probably get like 10 listens per week, like, maybe 20 or 30 if we're counting like, our friends or extended family, whatever. But like the fact that we, get, hundreds of downloads a week and like get thousands of downloads per month, like I think obviously people are listening and are continuing to come back. So there's something that people like, whether or not they agree 100% with everything that we are doing or saying. But
weren't we in the top 10 crime podcasts that people listen to? Did I see that somewhere? Something about that? The top 10 or top...
Well,
yeah, there was like stats, like, like top... It was like the top 10 or something. I'm like, where are these stats coming from? Like, I feel like that's not true, but I don't know.
I remember seeing it somewhere and I was that seems a little bit far-fetched, but I mean, if it is, like, go us, but I was like, I don't know.
Well, no, I think, there was one that said we were in the top 25% of Buzzsprout podcasts, because Buzzsprout is our host site. So obviously not every podcast out there is hosted by Buzzsprout, but out of the ones that are, we're apparently in the top 25.
That makes more sense, I guess. And that's still like really good, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, they show, and they actually broke it down, like how they get that number, and they say like, there's like thresholds for each one. So if you hit a certain number of downloads per week, then you're in the top 50. If you hit this much, you're in the top 25 or whatever. So we were like consistently in the top 25 of Buzzsprout, which was cool. And there was other stats, like there was other sites that like there was like lists of like top true crime podcasts of 2023 or 2022. And like we were like number 10 at one point, but I don't know what that's like. I don't know where they were getting that information. It said it was like based on like traffic to like the website or like present. I don't really know. It seemed like, I don't even know if it was true, but I mean, it was nice to see that, whether or not it was true. So, I mean, we'll see. I don't know whether or not we're in the top 10 legitimately in that list. I mean, I like to see it.
I wouldn't say, people always have to realize too that like we're not in this to make money. I mean, it would be nice if somebody gave us money to do our podcast, but in reality, it's not why we did our podcast to make extra money. We just did it because pandemic was going on and we thought it would be cool to do something like this. So,
and also like, if you go into a podcast with that as your main motivator, I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure, because like probably less than 1% of people who start a podcast are actually end up being like the top popular ones that everyone knows.
Yeah, unless you're like you're trained in journalism or like producing or something like that, right? Or you already have a huge fan base. If you're a celebrity already, like that makes sense. But I mean, someone that has no experience like us and just come from nowhere, then yeah, those are big dreams for sure.
Yeah, like I think there's millions of podcasts out there, and like if you ask someone name 10, I mean there's probably like 10 or maybe that someone who loves podcasts could list, like, you know, on average 10 or something, right? Like out of the millions that are out there. So there's, you know, very few percentage of people who actually start a podcast that are like, I'm gonna, you know, be famous.
What are your top 5 true crime podcasts? Let's see if we have any in common.
I don't even know if I have 5.
Dateline.
Yeah, Dateline is definitely one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, Dateline's my top 5 for sure. Crime Junkie.
Crime Junkie,
Crime Nighttime podcast.
I also like Crime Beat.
Oh, Crime Beat's good.
What did you say, AJ?
Case File for sure.
I said Nighttime.
Oh, I like the
Nighttime,
one,
yeah.
too.
That's another Nova Scotia podcast.
Yeah.
I met him. I know it. No, just kidding. Is that friend of a friend? He's probably listening.
Yeah.
If he listens, he'll be like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yeah, exactly. Undisclosed.
Oh yes, I like that
I
one
would
too.
say.
I think.
Canadian True
Just-
Crime.
Oh, what's that one? I don't think I've heard of that one. Canadian True Crime.
Yeah, it's all Canadian. It's Canadian True
Oh, cool.
Crime. Okay, so I'm gonna my top 5: Canadian True Crime, Case File, Dateline, Crime Junkie, and Anatomy of Murder. Probably.
Yeah, me, I would say Undisclosed. Are we like actually ranking them? Like the first one you say is your top
No,
one?
that was just my top 5. Yeah,
Okay.
just top 5.
Yeah, so Undisclosed, Crime Junkie, Crime Beat, Dateline, and Nighttime. That would be my 5.
Yeah, Crime Junkie, Dateline, Crime Beat, Nighttime, Undisclosed. But I am gonna listen to the one that Katie told me, the Canadian, because I'd never heard of it.
Canadian True
Yeah.
Crime,
And what was the other one? Forensic what? Or whatever you said.
Case File, just Case File. And maybe I just like because like the Canadian True Crime is she's Australian. Or she's from Australia, but she lives in Canada, and the Case File is also an Australian host. So I think I just like the Australian accent. But yeah, those are mine.
That's all I listen to. That's all I watch. That's all I listen to is crime shows.
Yeah.
I feel like the ones that we listed too were like pretty popular ones. So we didn't really list any like obscure ones, I feel. Which I guess goes to our point of like, I guess you only know, it's hard to find a show, right? Like unless you're searching for a specific case or like you type it in, but like if you just type in true crime, you're going to come up with the popular ones. So people can send us their true crime recommendations for like lesser known shows that deserve some attention. Because, you know, they could be just as good or better.
Yeah. I think the only time you ever come across those ones is like if I'm searching for like a specific case and then I put that title in, and then these other ones I've never heard of come up, which is how I discover new ones. But yeah, I think it's hard to find new ones that you actually really enjoy. It's just these big ones that we talk about because they're out there more. So
I was going to say, I'm assuming a lot of people find our show that way too. Like they might be following a certain case and they just type in that case and we come up because we did an episode on it. But so I guess like one thing I've learned too is trying to make it so like every episode that we do pretend as if it's the first time someone's tuning in. And so you want to make a good impression. You want it to be good and interesting. So that's something I learned too.
I also liked how like if I didn't hear about a case that AJ was doing or that Katie was doing, like I kind of like that. That way I'm more intrigued. Like I don't know what's going to happen. And I just find it more interesting if one of us doesn't know the case the other one's doing. I mean, not in this season because we all had to work together to put the case out. But I always like with the last four seasons where we each had to do a case. If like someone didn't hear about it, I kind of like that because it gives you like an opportunity to like ask questions and like because you don't know what happened or what went on.
yeah, that's kind of the thing I missed this season was not knowing what was going to happen because especially when it's like a 4 episodes and you're deep diving, like there's not much you don't know about it already going in, like at the end of it. So yeah, that's one thing I did miss from the previous ones, where just not knowing anything and just going along for the ride with everybody else.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed too. It's like, because I like presenting a case like in previous seasons when I only knew it, I did the research, and you guys didn't know anything about it. I liked that aspect of like telling the story and hearing your guys' like genuine reactions when you're hearing all the information for the first time. So yeah, that was one thing that was missing just because of how we did this season. But who knows? We might go back to that style in another season, just depending. Even next season, who knows?
Yeah, we could do a combination of like longer ones, like 3-4 parters, and then just single ones as well. So you never know what's gonna happen.
Do you guys have like a top 5 or top 10 episodes from like previous episodes that we've done? Like your favorite ones, the ones that were like really interesting or like super bizarre?
Yeah, I gotta think back.
I know. I was thinking the other day. I was like trying to think of all the ones that we've done, and I came up with a list of like the top. Well, I had 4 that I really thought were really interesting.
What are they?
Asia Degree is one of them. Johnny Gosh, Bagby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The very first one we did, the Valo, and then the Turpins. Those were those are the 5 that I had come up with. I mean, I'm sure like if I can remember all of them, I'm sure there's more, but those are the top 5 that I thought were super interesting and bizarre.
I guess for me, like it's always, because I was gonna ask you guys that question too of like what's your favorite. I guess it's hard to, it's weird like saying it as like favorite, like what's your favorite case. But I guess my most memorable ones, for me, it's really hard to pick, I guess. But I would say probably like, the Adnan one that we did early on. That was like one of our first ones. The Jeffrey Deskovic one, I would say, is one that sticks out because that was our first 3-parter, and we also got to have our first guests on the show. Like, not like I think we had my friend Jennifer on for season 1, but we already like all knew her. But like that was our first time having a guest on who not only was new to us, but actually was the person involved in the case. So that always sticks out to me.
I don't know why I didn't pick that. That like to me that was so cool because it's like, he's not really a celebrity, but he's actually went through something horrific, and it's like he went on our podcast to talk about it, and I thought that was like so cool because like here we are, like our little podcast that nobody really knows about, and here's this guy who like
I know. I was so nervous. I almost backed out. I was like, no, can't do this.
What?
I almost ducked out. Like, actually, yeah. My speaker doesn't work, or my headphone doesn't work. Gotta go.
Yeah.
I was like super nervous. I was like, I don't even know if I want to ask him questions. I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't know. Like, do I stare at him? Like, where do I look? Do you know what I mean?
I know.
I was so nervous. Like, it's not like he was in person. Like, he was here in the room with us, but he was like, I was like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, if he was in the room, if it was like face to face, I would have been even more nervous. I probably would have backed out.
Yeah, I can't make it. Just don't come.
Yeah. Because I was like, at the very least, if you get so nervous, you could just like, oh, my internet crashed, X out. Oh, what happened?
Yeah, I know.
If you're a person, you can't do that, really. So
no, yeah, so true. Ugh.
Yeah. So that was like, and also, but I told myself, I was gonna say, like, I told myself though, I'm like, if I don't do this, I'll be like regretful because this is like a cool opportunity, and at the very least, you can say that we were able to do that, and we also got to, I don't know, it was just cool because you're talking about these true crime cases and to actually hear from someone who was involved in the case that you're talking about. So I always knew that I would regret if we did back out, or if I did back out. So I'm happy I didn't.
I was the same. I knew that I would regret it. And so like I forced myself into all of those every time we had guest speakers. I forced myself to do it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the episode that we had him on, and then when like we all like went, like we all said goodbye and whatever, I was like, I'm so glad I actually did it, because if I would be kicking myself in the ass if I did not, because that was like the super cool opportunity to talk to somebody who actually went through something horrific. And it like, I don't know, it was just so cool because it's our little podcast, and he decided to come on, and because he could have said no, but I just thought it was super cool. I'm so glad that we actually did it, and we all.
I know. Yeah. I'm so glad that he agreed. Can you imagine if he's like, yeah, sure. And then we're all just like, oh, nah. Like, that would have been awful. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad that it worked out.
Gia, who was like super cool.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, Gia.
Like I would hang out with her, like
Yeah.
go to lunch or something. She seems super cool.
Yeah.
Did you hang out with her, AJ? Or you were going to?
Yeah, she was in Toronto for, I think it was for TIFF one year, and we were gonna hang out. Like we were just gonna like, meet up or like for coffee or like dinner or whatever. But I can't remember either like something came up and I couldn't, or something came up and she couldn't. It didn't work out anyway, but Gia, if you're listening, if you're ever in Toronto, send me a message, we can hang out. But yeah, and she came on the show twice because, obviously she had a good experience the first time. And she wanted to come on again, so that was cool.
I would love to have Rabia come on
me
her podcast
too.
if she ever would do that.
Oh yeah, I was actually gonna say my favorite moment of the show that we've done is like Rabia actually followed our podcast on Instagram. This was early on, like this was probably in season 1, probably after we did the Adnan case or something.
Yeah, I think it was. Did she still follow us, or did she unfollow?
I don't know. I don't want to look. I'm afraid to look. But
didn't she like share or like reshare something that we posted too, or was that
maybe
her, or that was somebody else?
Oh wait, no. That was about the Adnan case, but it was another. I think it was like Crime Door or like True Crime Door or something. Because they posted about us and used like our podcast cover for like a reel that they did, and then it didn't really go viral, but we got hundreds or thousands of views. But
so Rabia, if you're out there and you want to talk about Adnan, you can come into a Crime Family podcast.
Yeah, or if you can get Adnan to come on the show.
Yeah.
I'd be nervous. I probably would back out of that one. No, I wouldn't. But
yeah,
I would at least have the urge to. I would have to fight that urge to do that. But yeah, that would be my like coolest moment, because like she probably like followed us and then forgot who we were like an hour later, but because she follows so many people. But I mean, for at least a second, she knew who we were and clicked and followed us. So that was cool. So that would be like my favorite moment, and that was early on. So hopefully she still follows us. I haven't looked. Oh yeah, so I guess I was gonna say this like a while back when we actually like said something about it, but for those of you who like don't know, so the podcast, we sort of hinted at it, like began during the pandemic. So I think we were all just like, everything was closed. There was nothing to do. And I think it was Katie, who we have a group, like a sibling group chat. I think
it was me.
Who said something. Yeah. You're like, we should do a true crime podcast. And I had for like a couple of years before that was thinking like, oh, I really want to do a podcast, but I never really like knew someone who I would want to do one with, or what the topic would be. So when Katie said it, I was like, oh, cool. And then I kind of just jumped on the opportunity.
Yeah, I came up with a name as well. And I said, I'm just...
It's Katie's podcast. We're just on it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the main character. I'm surprised that we were all able to get our shit together enough to like actually do it. Because you know how you always talk about stuff and like plan it a little bit, but then it never happened. So I'm surprised we actually started, for one thing, and that we actually continued it. So that's big surprise for me.
It's just I'm surprised like I kept with it, because it's just a huge commitment, and like throwing like your other like out your life outside the podcast. It's like so busy. It's like, am I really gonna have time to do this? And then I started school, and I was like, am I really gonna have time to do this at all? And I like stuck with it because I was like, this is cool and I want to continue to doing it. So
yeah, it's like life was very unbusy when we started, because like we said, it was COVID. And then things just kept piling on, and we did stick with it. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And also, I think, I don't know, most of you probably know this, but maybe you don't. Like, we're also recording this remotely. So all three of us, we live in 3 different cities in Canada, and we're all in different time zones. So we are recording remotely. So when I see, because a lot of podcasts have, like the video aspect to it, where like they're in a studio recording together. It's like, just keep in mind, like, we are not ever together recording. I don't think we've ever recorded an episode in the same room together.
2 of you before, didn't you? Didn't 2 of you try to do it one time at the same?
I thought me and AJ did it, but he said we didn't.
I think like maybe we were planning to, but then we realized like we only have one mic in the
It
room.
just wouldn't work. Yeah.
It just wouldn't work.
But-
Um,
And we're also in 3 different time zones, so like we always have to make sure. Like for me, it's harder for me, or well, probably AJ too, just because it's like the later we go, the later into night it is for me. Like usually, if we start at 7, it's like 7 my time, but sometimes we have to start like 9 my time, so it's like
Yeah, because with the work schedules, if we like if I work until 5, then we can't even start until then.
10 my time.
Yeah, well, 9. Yeah, so
9, yeah.
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 So
So
it's
it's like-
tough.
I don't know if people know that, like it's 3 different time zones that we're trying to schedule our recording with. And we used to do it on the weekend, but now we try to do it during the week because we don't want to fill up our whole weekend doing recordings because then it takes out away from other stuff. But
yeah, like Steph lives on the east coast of Canada. Katie lives on the west coast, and it's a 4-hour time difference between them. And then I'm like in the middle. So, yeah. So just like Katie said, like when she's working, she gets off at 5. That's already 9 p.m. for Steph. So even if Katie can't start right at 5, it's like 5:30. Then that's already 9:30, and we record for a couple of hours sometimes. And Steph, like, you know, if she had to go to work early, she had to be up early. Like she can't really be up.
I'm old and I go to bed early. Just kidding.
Yeah, but like you're working, like you work early, like when
Oh yeah.
you had to be up at a
Yeah.
certain
And
time.
I also have
So
or like I have 2 kids and they always wake up in the middle of the night. So it's like
yeah,
earlier for me the better usually.
yeah.
But
So like,
definitely when I go back to work, it's also gonna be
mhm.
we'll have to figure out that too.
So like logistically, it's hard. That's why we did it mostly on weekends or exclusively on weekends, up until this season. But yeah, like Katie and Steph are both like on mat leave for the season, so it's easy like when you're not working during the day to get maybe day
That's
recording.
gonna change too.
Yeah,
Probably in September.
Yeah, for next season, it's gonna change because I'll be back at work probably. So yeah,
I'll be back at work. Yeah. Oh no, I won't be if you do it in the summertime. But come September, we'll all be back at work, so we'll have to do it on the weekends. So
yeah. So logistically, it'll be hard, and then it's hard too because we're not, you know, like we enjoy doing the podcast, but we're not making an income off the podcast, right? So it's hard, like, to give up. Before, I feel like in other seasons, like we almost felt like we were giving up our whole weekend, like because we would record sometimes on a Saturday and a Sunday night, and that's like, you know, so when you're working all week and then you have the weekends, but then you're recording on the weekends, which was the only time we could do it. It was hard. And then I feel like we would try to do it maybe during the day on weekends, so we'd have the evenings, but like it still didn't work out because, you know, you guys have kids and things come up during
Yeah.
the day, and it's hard.
and then we get behind and we record, and then we'd have to edit everything in like a couple days and get it out. So and then we'd have to record the next one for the next week. So it was kind of like a super big commitment, and it's almost like it had to be like last resort kind of, because it was like obviously work would come first, family, and then we were all in school at one point, which you're paying for that, so that it takes priority too. So then it was like after all that's done, then you have to work on this. And you know, we didn't want it to be like shitty because we were busy. We didn't want to like skip out on it. So yeah, I feel like we did a really good job. We did a really good job considering how busy our lives were. So proud of us for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we were all in school, it was a nightmare because like that was an extra thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. All working full time, all in school. Like Jesus.
yeah. So
I was gonna say because a lot of people don't know. Like, I mean, before we did podcasts, I didn't know how much work it went into a podcast, and a lot of people don't know how much work it actually is to do a crime podcast. Like, you can do like a podcast of just like shooting the shit all the time, but when you actually have to do like research and stuff, it takes a lot of your time. And then when you have like schoolwork to do on top of that, it's like you have to do schoolwork one night and then research the next night. So you're like literally giving up all your evenings just to do podcasts in school. And it's like I don't know, some people might not realize that like it's a lot of work.
mm-hmm. And during the pandemic, I think like that was not even a problem. Like it was like, no, I want stuff to do in the evenings where like nothing's open. I can't go anywhere anyway. I can't see anyone. So it's like, yes, give me a project to work on that will keep me busy, whatever. But then like as soon as like things started opening up again, it's like, well, now there are options on weekends. I can go see people. I can do things. So it became like,
I remember thinking like, I was like thinking to myself, like when the pandemic's over, like, are we going to continue on? to myself, I was like, we're probably just gonna end the podcast after the pandemic's over because nobody's gonna have time to do it. But like Katie said, like it took a lot of dedication to continue on after the pandemic once we all got really busy.
And we were like burned out too by the end of every season. I feel like the last few episodes of every season was always a struggle for me. Like it was just like trying to get through it. And also too, like you want to do it well, because you don't want to put something out there that's absolute shit, but also because like we said earlier, like these are real people and like they're real lives. So it's like you want to feel like you're doing it justice when you're telling the story. It's like you don't want to sound like you're just like over it and don't care. So it's like sometimes hard to like push through those last few episodes, even though because there was so much happening and whatever. So that's why I feel like we took an extra long break before season 5 because we were just, I know I was like feeling it a little bit, all the burnout or whatever. And then, so I definitely felt like this season went by the fastest. Like we kind of flew through the episodes. I didn't really feel that like heavy feeling of burnout, that I probably was feeling for the other ones. And also like Steph said, there's different levels of work that go into a podcast, right? Like, yeah, you can have a podcast where if like every episode was just this, what we're doing now, which like doesn't really take much pre-work, right? You're just like no script, no research, you're just talking. Anyone can sit there and do that, and yeah, it's fine. But like when you're doing a crime one where you actually have to do all the research, and then we also don't have like a team, right? We don't have editors, we don't have like researchers, which
Yeah, or like fact checkers.
yeah, like if we just had to sit down and talk and that was it would be easier.
Yeah, and not only are we just like, well, I can't say for me because I only do research, but you guys do other stuff, like you do like the Instagram and like all the like social media posts, and then you do like the bonus episodes, and we have to create like merch and design like that. So it's not just research; it's also everything else that's like behind the scenes, and it's like you guys, because I don't really do the social media and stuff like that, but it's like you guys are doing, like we don't have a team doing like social media or have a team like watching the merch website. Like it's like us doing it all. So it is a lot of time consuming, but it's also fun at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot of burnout at the beginning in the first few seasons because we were trying to get like the website going and doing all the editing. We had no idea what we were doing, so it was taking forever, and like getting the merch going and all that stuff. So I think that's why it felt harder, because it was a lot more work at the beginning. And now, yeah, like you just said, this last season flew by. I think it's because, I don't know, I think we're just better at it. It's easier to edit now because we know what we're doing and we know how to talk and like go back and say things to make it easier to edit. So yeah. And like, I mean, if we didn't edit it as heavily, it would also be a lot easier. But I feel like I liked having like the polished edited version rather than just kind of like candid, not edited. You know what I mean? Some people have that, which is fine, but I like having it nicely edited.
Yeah. And so I think the season felt easier to get through, just like workload wise. Also, this was the first season I think that I wasn't in school for. Every other season, I think, except maybe the first season, but every like seasons 2 to 4, like I was in school. So there was just an added thing. Like, yeah, it felt like homework on top of homework that you already had to do. So I think that also made a difference too. But overall, I mean, there must have been something that we enjoyed. I mean, here we are sitting here and like complaining about the work and all that, but obviously there's something that we enjoyed out of it. Otherwise we wouldn't have stuck with it.
Yeah.
I think there's like
we could have quit at any time, but we decided to keep going. So yeah, that says something.
Yeah. And like, I think there's a stat out there that's like, there's like the 7 episode hump. Like most podcasts don't make it past episode 7. So I think there's a thing like, if you can get through the first 7 episodes, then I think you have like a significantly higher chance of actually continuing with the podcast. So yeah, I don't know how true that is, but I feel like I've seen that out there. That's like, it really takes 7 episodes to determine whether it's like going to be a long-term thing or not. Because most people probably realize like, oh, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. And especially if you're just starting out in your first 7 episodes and you're not like getting a following or making money or anything, like you really have to be like interested and passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise,
especially when there's no like return on your hard work, you're working and you're editing and you're doing all this stuff, but nothing's really coming out of it. Yeah, you really have to like want to do it. because there's no reward per se. And yeah, and if we ever decide to like take a break or leave, we'd obviously, I think, tell everybody, because I've listened to podcasts before where they just like never come back, and it's like been years, and you're like, oh, I guess they're not coming back, and they like never have an exit, they never say anything, they just one episode, like just one day, that's the last episode, they never come back. So I don't think we'll ever do that to you, so don't worry.
Yeah, you'll know. I think if we're not coming back, I would say.
The longest break we've had was the one that we just before we did season 5. I think that's the longest we've ever.
Yeah, that was because I felt the most burnt out definitely after season 4.
Yeah,
it was just like getting to be too much almost. So we definitely needed that long break.
Like, I'm interested to see how far we can make this podcast go. Like, thinking the other day, like how many? It's already been what, like 3 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, we just surpassed our 3-year anniversary a couple months.
Which is crazy to think about. It's been 3 years already that we've done this. I'm just thinking to myself, how long do you think we could go until like one of us doesn't want to do anymore, or like we just don't do it anymore? But I feel like it's one of those things that we're always gonna want to do it, because true crime and crime in general is like runs in our family. Like, everybody likes to learn. I shouldn't say crime that run in our family, but like documentaries and crime, like,
the interest in it,
listening to crime. But
yeah, and
so I feel like it's never gonna become boring to us.
No, and there's never gonna be a shortage of material, which is not a good thing, I guess. But you're never not gonna have a case to talk about, because there's always gonna be a case, old or new, out there. So yeah.
And the cases that we've done, there's always gonna there might be updates, so they're always gonna be like always something to talk about.
Yeah, and also I think there's really dependent on how you do it, like to keep it fresh and interesting for yourself. Like, I think maybe season 5, maybe we can all agree, it's like maybe it reinvigorated our interest in it, because just the way we did it, like it was more manageable, it flew by quicker, we didn't feel the burnout as much. So it's maybe like the style how we do it, and like maybe the way that we do it also can play a big part in whether it will still be maintaining an interest in doing it and all of that stuff. So I would say overall, like, the way we did this season, I think, was a success, just considering how it like made us each feel. Like, it made us feel a little bit less burnt out, and a little more manageable.
And yeah, and I also think being like ahead of the release dates helps too, like recording and then not having to release for weeks, or like even a month and a half later. So you have more time to kind of edit and plan things, rather than, oh my God, I have to get this out in a couple days, which is what was happening. So yeah, it definitely lessens the stress and makes it more enjoyable, for sure. But we always say that we're always going to be ahead of it every season, and then somehow we get down to the crunch time and we're like, yeah, I got to do this in 24 hours.
Yeah, it's like the episode comes out in a day and I am not ready at all.
Yeah, and I got to start editing. Yeah. So.
Yeah. But also, I was going to say, but that also comes with its own negatives too, because like when we record in advance so far, it's like sometimes there could be like updates in the case that like come out in the interim, like between when we record it and between when it comes out. So then it's like, well, we have to add something in about it, or we can release it, but it's going to not have the most up-to-date information. So I always feel like there's that struggle for me, because it's like, it's hard, also because of what we talked about, how we're all in different time zones and we record in like early in advance. Like, it's really hard to get that like breaking news. Like, we can't really release an episode like the day that there's like a breaking news story, like, or even the next day. Like, if we do it, it's going to be like a couple of weeks when it actually comes out. And then by that time, there's even more updates from the initial one. So it's like, it's hard to like keep on top of it, and like and the other podcasts are going to like, they have daily episodes or whatever. Like, they're going to be breaking that news to many people before. So it's always feel like we're kind of fighting that, like, it's old news by the time we get to it.
Yeah, that's true. But also I feel that people that are able to get the breaking news and have an episode like that day or the next day, like it's like either their full-time job or they have a whole team that can help them. Whereas we can't just drop everything and record an episode and then release it the next day. So that's the difference.
Yeah. So also maybe this season, that was one thing that made it a little easier, because like we did like cases that were like not fresh in the news. I mean, some of them had new breaking updates, but like the OJ one happened like 30 years ago. So it wasn't like we were going to be fighting that constant new information coming out, like we felt pretty confident that like, okay, nothing new is going to be like no breaking news is going to come out about this case before it comes out. Also, I was going to say one thing too that was interesting was like this season I feel like it just happened this way, but I feel like a lot of the cases or most of them that we've done have like had sort of these new updates while we were doing it. So like, or not even while we were doing it, but like even shortly after. So for example, like we did the OJ one and then the news that like OJ died like a couple months after we did it. Like there's been no news about OJ for years. And then all of a sudden, like a month or two after we do our episode on him, there's that development. And then like the Lacey Peterson one, we like right when we started researching it was when like news came out that they Innocence Project was taking on the case, which was a new development. And then like we have the Long Island serial killer where like his trial is going to be starting like right around the time that we were recording it. And so it's just interesting that like it kind of happened that way. There seemed to be some type of something. And like Amanda Knox, when we did that one, like then she shortly after was in the news again because I saw something in the news that she was like being sued for defamation by one of the guys. So it's like just funny.
Yeah, it is interesting because all the ones we picked, like you said, were older. And so I was thinking that this, like, just going to be everyone already knows everything about these cases. But yeah, that like new stuff was happening as we were like recording or after. So that was just a coincidence, but worked out, I guess.
The Scott Peterson one, or the Lacey Peterson one, like really shocked me when I saw it. I'm like, wow, that's something. Because I haven't heard like anything about the case until that time when that came out, and I was like, that's very interesting that they decided.
Yeah, like I hadn't heard that story, hadn't been in the news for years, and then we decided to start researching it, and then all of a sudden there's like that breaking news, and it wasn't just like a small development; it was like a huge news that like the Innocence Project.
Yeah, that is huge. Yeah, and also the Long Island serial killer. Like you were saying, even before we decided to do this like deep dive, I was looking into it because I was going to do a case on it anyway, or an episode on it, and then we decided to do it, and then they like have a suspect, which is like they didn't have a suspect when I started researching it, so it's kind of crazy.
It was meant to be like the Long Island one, because I remember we talked about it for like almost every season. They were like, oh yeah, we should do this one, we just never did, and then we decided to do it this season, and that happened to be a suspect, so we kind of like we waited on purpose, but not really, you know what I mean?
It's like we knew it subconsciously to hold off on covering it until there was an actual, like, an arrest made or something.
Which is still crazy because, like, the case was, like, what, 10 years old? No. Yeah. So, even more than that, I guess. So it's, like, crazy that, like, they found somebody. I mean, I'm not going to go way into the case and talk about it, but I'm just saying, like, it was just crazy how, like, when we were doing it, and then all of a sudden they found a case. So it's like we could actually deep dive into the case, knowing that at the end
there's an answer. Actually, finally,
there's an answer. Yeah.
I think that's why it took me so long to like actually do it, because it was so big. I was like, how am I going to fit this into like an hour episode? I didn't think I could, and yeah, so that's why we needed to expand it out, and the timing worked out. So kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I was also going to ask you if you guys had like one, I don't know if it's like one moment that stuck out to you about like whether it's like listener feedback, like if you've heard feedback from people or like seen our comments or emails or anything like like something that stuck out to you, or kind of a moment. I wanted to mention it because I don't know, I was trying to think of like behind the scenes things that people wouldn't know. And it was like, remember like a couple months ago when there was a development in the Natalie Holloway case, which we actually covered in a previous season. And we actually were reached out to by a news corporation via email who wanted to like interview one of us about the developments, because I guess they had seen that we'd done. And I mean, I'm sure that they had a list of podcasts that they reached out to. Like, of course, they didn't just single us out. We were probably on a long list. But I mean, it still felt weird, or it felt cool to like have sort of like a news agency reach out to us. I mean, and the reason we didn't do it was because, I mean, it was Fox News. So I'm not going to ever participate in anything that they have going. But so disappointing that it wasn't someone like better, because if it had been like, I don't know, CNN or like CBC or whatever, some legitimate news outlet.
Or like NBC or something like
Yeah.
that.
Literally anyone else other than Fox
Mhm.
News.
Yeah, but I feel like they would have like legit reporters that would report on theirs, not some random podcast. That's why it was Fox.
Yeah. Fox was desperate, I'm sure. That's like they had no
Yeah, but it was still cool that they reached out to us. Like, and also I felt very underqualified to even talk to Fox News, so that's why I was like, nope.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah, because we're not investigators, and we're not professionals in crime. So it's not like we know all the like logistics and like the facts and all that stuff. It's like for someone to interview us about like the case, I would feel very unprofessional or very like unprepared, because we just do it as a podcast and we try to get all the facts, but like we're not like we can't really talk about it professionally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, we've said it multiple times on the show, like we're not professionals in the crime world. We're not investigators. We're not police officers. We're not, like lawyers. So we're just kind of talking about based on our opinions or our ideas. Like we take the facts, but then like our interpretation of the facts is based on our like lens of not being professionals. We're just true crime, people interested in true crime. So yeah, it would have felt weird to even be like interviewed about the case, because like people are going to watching and be like, who are you? Like this random person has a podcast. But nonetheless, it was still cool to like kind of be reached out to in that way, or it kind of like legitimized like, oh, like maybe that is the potential for something in the future of if someone else reaches out to us or whatever the case may be. But that was like kind of a cool moment of like,
Just not Fox News.
yeah, like not Fox News. Yeah, I would hope they never reach out to us again. But if it's anyone else, I would be happy to at least entertain the idea. So yeah, that was kind of a cool thing. And that just happened like, this season. It was just a couple of months ago. But yeah, that was like a cool moment.
I think one of the cool moments that I remember, there's a couple of them, like the Jeffrey Deskovic one, but also going on that other person's podcast, like for some reason I can't think of his name. I think it was like way early on, like one of our first seasons or second season, that podcast we went on. Do you remember the name of it?
Yeah, Unexplained Inc. was the podcast
Yes.
name. Yeah.
So I thought like that was pretty cool, because it was another podcaster wanting us to go on their podcast. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And also just like realizing like there's such a community of podcasters. Like I'm in so many like Facebook groups of like podcasters who are just people starting out, who are looking for advice, or just people who are looking for guests, or people who just have questions or whatever about podcasting. So it's cool that there's like such a community about podcasters. And it's kind of one of those things that's like, as someone who does a podcast, who like researches the podcast, edits it, all that stuff, like to have other people who know the struggles that come along with doing a weekly show, it's just cool to have that community.
Do you guys think that maybe in upcoming seasons we should get more guests, or like what do you think we can bring to like the new seasons coming up?
Yeah, I was actually gonna like say that like I think we should try and get like more guests on our show. Like even if it's like, I don't know, I feel like, I mean, you can never have too many guests, but like maybe like one or two guests, or maybe three, depending on like what type of like theme or what type of cases we were doing. But it would be cool to have more guests on our show, and it'd be cool to go on other people's shows. So if anybody, other crime podcasts out there would like us on their show.
I always have been thinking like we should probably have more guests. We did have quite a few, like in season 2, we actually had, I think like 4 maybe in season 2, which is like, then in the other seasons we had barely any. So I would like to have more guests. I think it just keeps it like fresh and interesting, and it's like just so cool that you can like interview someone, not even like interview necessarily, just like have a conversation with them. But knowing like how many times when we, like if we had guests and then I was like stressed out over it for weeks of like, oh my gosh, this is like so stressful. I don't necessarily want to put myself through that, but also you're never going to get better at doing it or feel more comfortable with it until you do it. It's just kind of one of those things. So it's like, if we were the show that had guests every week, like by now it would have been like no big deal. So I feel like we just have to get to that point. where we're just more comfortable doing it, I think. But I'm open to it, and I want to have more guests for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be more comfortable now interviewing people and also going on someone else's show. I just feel just more comfortable in the whole process as a whole. So even yeah. So I don't know.
Are there any like podcast conventions? I think that'd be really cool if we could go to a podcast or one of us.
Yeah, there
could go
definitely
to a
are.
podcast convention.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd
There's
be
lots.
something that would be really cool for us to do. I mean, I don't think there's any around here in Halifax. I'm not sure, but I'm sure like Toronto would have a ton.
Yeah, there is one here that happens every year, I think in February. And I was like, I think it was last year I was considering going, and then this year I was gonna again considering going, but then I don't really know. I think I was like traveling for work or something and wasn't able to, or just whatever, didn't. But that would be fun too, or just like. I also feel too, because it's hard when you're like just a little show. You don't really know like how much impact you could have. So it's like you always see those like podcasts that are able to like have big like fundraisers, and they like donate money to like causes for true crime or for victims' families or whatever. It's like it feels like as a young or a little podcast, we aren't able to do that. So it's like I want to attend a convention, or I want to do something just to like, I don't know, talk about the cases or do something where you feel like you're having some type of impact in ways that you can, not being, having millions of dollars that you can just like donate to a cause or something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I always feel like too. Like I want to give back to some of the causes that are out there related to like victims and stuff. And I mean like some of the huge podcasts like Crime Junkie are able to do that because they have such a huge fan base, and they have people that they make lots of money, so it's easy to donate $1 million when you have 20 million, right? So just getting to the point where you can like even have the time and money to give back is a goal of mine for sure.
Yeah, and then you can like have like live events, or like go to a convention, not even like as an attendee, but like maybe if you like gave a, because I know the one in Toronto actually where it's like you can sign up and you can like give a talk on whatever topic about podcasting, whether it's like, I don't know, whatever the topic is. Obviously you would have to like probably some type of selection process for that. They're not just going to let anyone get up there and talk about anything, but like even like to have the confidence one day to potentially even feel comfortable being like, oh yeah, I could like stand up in front of a crowd and like talk about whatever the topic is. But also a part of me feels like I'm not qualified enough to even do that. Like, what am I going to talk about? Like, sit there and talk about remote recording a podcast? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I don't have an expertise in anything that would be relevant. So building up to that, where you can have sort of that like impact in that way, I don't know, is something that I would be interested in like working towards too for the future.
Yeah, even though I've been a podcaster for like going on like over 3 years, I still feel like I don't have anything to like contribute or say about it, even though like we're in it, we're doing it. But yeah, it's like that imposter syndrome. It's like I'm not qualified to talk about it, even though I've been doing it for 3 years, kind of thing. But yeah, I think eventually getting to that point where you have that confidence would be cool. And even just like going to those events, like network with other even small podcasts or people that have things in common or similar goals, like just getting to know other people out there would be beneficial for sure.
Yeah, because like you never know who you're gonna network with, where it'll lead. Like it could also, even if nothing, you're just like meeting new people and getting to know about them and their shows and whatever. Like, but also you have the potential where like maybe they have you on their show, which could lead to something. Like you never really know. So I feel like you have to put yourself out there to attend. So the one in Toronto, who knows, maybe 2025, I will attend that one. Maybe with one of you, if you want to come to Toronto and do it or something. I don't know. But yeah, and also like just trying to think, because now we're kind of wrapping up the season, season 5. So thinking about what we can do for the next season, how to keep it continually interesting, not just for the listeners, but also for us, like doing it, what makes us excited about doing it. I have some ideas that I'm gonna, maybe once we stop recording, I can throw it out there, because it's not confirmed. But yeah, we have 100 episodes down. I feel like we've done the grunt work to get through like the growing pains of starting a show, which we're still going through. I mean, we're never going to be perfect, I feel. There's always something we can improve on, whether it's our sound quality or our whatever, our research or whatever.
Yeah, I still have editing woes. I feel like until we can get like soundproof studios, I'm never going to be happy with the sound quality. But I mean, I think it's as good as it's going to get without a professional studio.
Yeah, so it's cool to say like we have 100 episodes under our belt, and who knows if we have another 100 episodes in us to go for 200. I was gonna say, like, yeah, if you guys like, if the listeners listening to the show, you know, if you want to hear more of our banter, or if you want to have more episodes where we're just like shooting the shit or whatever, like, let us know, because obviously we don't know what you guys are enjoying or what you enjoy unless you let us know, or maybe you hate it, you just want to hear the cases, which, you know, can do that too, who knows. But also, like, who knows the potential, like, I was gonna say this a little earlier, we got sidetracked, of like, there was also like sort of like the story of how the show got going. There was gonna be 4 hosts of the show, because there's 4 of us, so we were gonna have the 4th host, but, you know, Katie was saying at the beginning of the episode, like, we just like surprising that we were able to get our shit together, and I mean, like, 3 of us were able to get our shit together. And then this our sister Lisa, she was going to be a co-host, and then she just didn't want to or whatever, and then was going to come on for an episode to be a guest, and then that fell through because I don't know, she couldn't get her shit together again. I'm kidding. So who knows, maybe she'll come on the show in season 6 and you'll be able to hear her on the show for once. But there is a 4th,
and our mom wants to come on our show, so
I
think Dad wanted to come on our show too. Her mom was trying to convince Dad to come on our show. Like, all of them come on at the same time. I'm like, that's a little weird, but sure. Because we're all true crime junkies.
Get the whole family on there.
That'd be cool though to have the whole family like in on an episode though, and just like to literally just shoot the shit, or do a case and then talk about it.
Like, I feel
we're
like
all like we all love true crime. Like
logistically, that would be a nightmare.
I wish Lisa would come on, because Lisa really loves true crimes. Like, all she does is watch true crime. And I think she'd be good to talk with about a case. So, Lisa, if you're hearing this, get your shit together and get on our podcast.
Maybe y'all can donate money, and we can send Lisa a new laptop, because I think that was the problem before. Her laptop was just shit and wouldn't work. You know, I'm sure she would appreciate that, and she can come on.
I think she has a new laptop. You know, she doesn't.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, we're all in a group chat, so I was gonna say she was all ready to go, and we were gonna like, she had done the research, she had watched the documentary, she was gonna come on, and like, I think it was for the Madeleine McCann one, like, she was gonna sit there and be like on the show with us, but then like we were literally recording or starting to record, and her laptop just froze. I think she got like one sentence out, and then she froze.
Yeah, and then we just had to like go on without her.
Yeah, and then she like told us, she's like, I could hear. She's like,
yeah.
I can hear you, but like, I'm frozen. So like, we were like going on about how she was annoying. Not how she was annoying, but like how it was annoying that she couldn't do it, and she could hear the whole time. And then Mom was pissed.
Because I was gonna say, if you want to hear somebody get riled up about a case, Lisa's the one to talk to, because she has some feistiness in her about cases. So she needs to come on our podcast to share her opinions.
I feel like we'll get sued the first time we release an episode with her on it. She'll say something, we'll release it, and then we'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe it's for the best that she's who knows. But I mean, anyone can come on our show. Like, if Mom wants to come on the show, or if Dad wants to come on the show. I mean, Dad, I feel like technology wise, like, it would be a nightmare. I don't even know how that would be even physically possible unless
he wouldn't know where to look, what to do, or
no.
So that's why I said Mom has to come on with Dad, because he couldn't do it by himself.
We'll see what the future holds for the show, but yes, we're gonna kind of wrap it up. I guess one last thing. Is there like one overarching thing you've learned from doing the first 100 episodes? Like, what is your takeaway? If we like stopped doing it today, what would be like your takeaway that you would move forward with? Like,
oh no, I'm just proud of myself for sticking with it and doing a podcast, which I thought I would never be able to do, and just doing something that so passionate about, which is true crime and watching movies and documentaries and then talking about them. I don't know, I think to me, just having the podcast be successful is what I'm most proud of, or my most takeaway, I guess.
I think I'd learn not to take, I don't know, guess myself so seriously. It's a serious topic, serious cases, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter what people have to say. As long as you're enjoying it, and doing a good job, then that's, I think, all that matters. So that's my lesson learned so far.
Yeah, I would say mine is like, I guess just if you're out there, if you want to start a podcast, I feel like you should just do it because you never know. Like I had zero expectations going in. Like I said before, I didn't even know if anyone's even going to be listening. But the fact that we do have people who consistently come back and listen, and you know, we have had a lot of downloads and stuff like that. So I think there's always going to be people out there who want to hear what you have to say, regardless of the topic. So I guess just take the leap and do it, I would say. So I think we're going to wrap it up. That kind of, we're, at over an hour already. So, yeah, I think this was a good way to just kind of reflect on our first 100 episodes and think about how to, like, moving forward with the show. So we are going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus. Probably not as long as the last one that we took before season 5, but we will be away for a little bit. And then we will be back at some point. We'll announce it on social media before we do come back officially. So you can follow us on social media at Crime Family Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Crime Family Pod 1 on X. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, Crime Family Podcast. You can leave us a review and a comment on the show on your favorite podcast app if you would like. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you want to be a patron of the show, you can subscribe to our Patreon, get some bonus content. I mean, we are probably going to not be posting bonus content during the hiatus, but if you want access to our previous bonus episodes, and you'll also get early access to new episodes once they're available and all of that stuff. So you can sign up there. The link's in the show notes. You can also get merch for the show if you would like. The link to that is in the show notes as well. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this retrospective episode. We hope you enjoyed season 5, and we'll be back at some point. Hopefully not too far in the future with season 6. So thank you so much. Take care, and bye.
Bye.
Bye.